Welcome back, everybody. This is Chad with Irate Veteran 8888, and today we've got a little gunsmithing video for you. We're going to show you how to install a scope base on your rifle the proper way. And this may seem like a very simple task to most of you guys out there, but be surprised, there's a lot of people that actually get this wrong, either by using the incorrect techniques or by using the improper tools for the job. And we're going to kind of go over the tools and some of the other little items that you need to do this job properly. And this is kind of like a starting point in this little Remington 700 AAC-SD project that I've got here. I bought this rifle recently just as kind of like a baseline rifle to start kind of a medium range scout style bolt action sniper rifle project, if you will. You know, I'm planning on maybe dropping in like a nice KRG Whiskey 3 chassis system. It's got a folding stock, much like a Socko TRG 42 or 22, that sort of thing. Going to be dropping a Badger Ordnance scope rail on this thing today, and I'm going to drop my Leupold Mark IV on it eventually. I'm going to show you in a separate video how to properly mount and align your scope, get everything set up, level things up using a couple of proper tools and such as that. But anyways, getting to the meat and potatoes of this video, we're going to be installing a Badger Ordnance rail. Like I said, this is a very high quality 20 minute of angle scope base. This is a solid steel billet here, and quite substantial and very solid unit. We're going to be using that. It comes with the proper hardware and whatnot, the Torx fasteners and such. And basically this is what you're installing. So that's all you need there. Getting into some of the tools that you need for this particular job, a good quality set of gunsmithing screwdrivers is a must. This is a Brownell's Magnatip set that we're using with good high quality hollow ground bits that fill the slot in your screws and give you pretty much 100% contact and give you way less chance of marring the screws or slipping and marring your gun or the finish in some form or fashion. These are a must for any gun enthusiast who wants to work on their own rifles and whatnot. But good quality screwdriver set here with the proper size bit for our plugs that are in our receiver that we're going to have to remove to install the base. We're going to be using some red loctite today to secure our fasteners to our receiver here. The high strength loctite provides a little bit better hold, obviously, than the medium strength blue that's typically used for similar applications. Also, it takes a little bit of heat most of the time to actually break this adhesive loose once it's set in place. But we're also going to be coating the underside of the scope base itself to eliminate any sort of moisture seepage up under the receiver onto the underside of the scope base and allowing rust to develop. You're going to need a pipe cleaner. This is just a little item that I like to use. This is basically just a pipe cleaner that you would use to clean your AR-15 gas tube. And what I like to do with this is add a little bit of degreaser, which we're going to be using some of the LPS A151 degreaser, but you can use something like acetone as well. It'll remove all the grease and it dries very quickly. But what we're going to use this for is to degrease the inside of the screw holes in the receiver. Very, very handy little thing to have right there. For applying the proper torque to our screws on our scope base, we're going to be using the Brownell's Magnatip torque handle. This is a user adjustable torque handle that you can go from 0 all the way up to 70 inch-pounds. So this pretty much covers the full gamut of anything that you would want to do on a rifle. Typically, your scope bases, scope rings and such can take torque from about 15 to 20 or 25 inch-pounds, maybe 30 inch-pounds depending on the material. Even like your action screws and such, usually those go up to about 65 inch-pounds. Now we're talking about inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, so you don't need some big torque handle for this job. Something like this Magnatip torque handle right here does the trick. But anyways, that's pretty much all you'll need for this. Like I said, this is a very, very simple task, and we're going to change the camera angle here and we're going to get to it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is actually pull the bolt out, obviously make sure the rifle is unloaded, which it is. I can visually see there's nothing in the chamber for all you safety Nazis out there. First thing to do is to remove the plugs that are in the receiver to protect the screw holes, okay? Very simple task, but a lot of people, like I said, screw this up because they don't use the proper tools. This is a proper size hollow ground Magnatip bit, and these bit heads are magnetic, which is nice because these little plugs are tiny and very easy to lose. So all we're going to do is just fit our screw head and remove these. Very, very simple task. I'm going to drop them on my little United States Gun Mat Company magnetic mat. These things are immensely handy. Some of the videos we've done up at Moss with Ray, see, just there, I slipped and see my little plug stuck to my bit. Alright, So from the factory, the rifle is going to come oiled up and whatnot. The screw holes are going to have a lot of oil in it. That's where our degreaser comes into play. So what we're going to do is take our pipe cleaner. We're going to use some of our A151 degreaser, or like I said, you can use acetone for this step. It doesn't really matter. Just whatever you have on hand that's a good quality degreaser that will remove all the oil from the surface. You want to start with a dry surface when you're using any sort of Loctite or rock set or anything like that. Otherwise, it's basically like you're not even using the product itself at all. So pipe cleaners work very, very well for this task. Just get that pipe cleaner in there and rub it around. And it doesn't really matter if you get some on the gun or the stock. You know, this is a Hogue over molded stock, so it's rubber, it's not going to hurt it. So just get our degreaser in there and see. You can see on the pipe cleaner all that oil and whatnot that is coming out of these screw holes here. So that's what you want to see. Get that stuff in there, clean it up real good. Make sure it's good and degreased. Okay, we're going to take our air compressor down here. Very handy thing to have in the shop. We're just going to dry these holes out. After your screw holes are dried out, we can move on to degreasing the fasteners that come with the scope base itself. Let's move on to that now. Alright, so the next step, continuing on with the degreasing, is going to be degreasing the fasteners that come with your scope base. Now, these may be degreased from the factory, but you don't want to take any chances. You want to just go ahead and degrease them. So what I like to do is just put my fasteners in just a cleaning bucket or something like that. And I like to just hose them down with a good quality degreaser, like we mentioned earlier. Okay. Usually degreasing agents work very quickly. You can pull these out individually, and if you're using like acetone, like I said, it'll dry very quickly. Otherwise, you can just use an air compressor and just make sure you don't lose your screws, and you can just blow these off and you set them to the side. After we get these done, we're going to go ahead and move on to getting our rail set up on our receiver and getting these screws Loctited and torqued down into place. Alright guys, at this point we have our fasteners degreased as well as our receiver mounting holes. I've gone ahead and taken the liberty to degrease the top of the receiver as well as the bottom of the scope base itself. And what we're going to do is apply a little bit of Loctite to the two components, and that's going to seal the space in between the receiver and the base. And that's going to keep moisture out, and it's going to mitigate any sort of rust from developing over time. Additionally, on these receiver scope bases, you have a very nice recoil shoulder that's built into the base itself, and what that does is butt up against the front of the ejection port here, and it keeps some of the pressure off of the fasteners. So there's less chance over time of the base coming loose from the fasteners starting to shear off or anything like that. Not commonly seen on rifles like this in 308, but on some of your big bore stuff, if the base doesn't have a solid recoil shoulder, then the screws literally can just shear right off, and your base, your rings, everything can just fall right off your rifle over time if the fasteners aren't of substantial size or strength. But you want to make sure that when the base is in place that it's pushed all the way forward. It does have a little bit of play to it, and you know, when you start to shoot your rifle, you might have the base kind of settle in place and the screws could actually come loose or not be at the proper torque setting anymore. So that could lead to problems down the road. But anyways, what we're going to do is just basically apply a little bit of red Loctite to the bottom of the base itself. You can be fairly liberal with this because you're going to clean up any excess that comes out. And I like the red Loctite a lot because it's kind of goopy and it flows really well. So about like that there. And we're going to just drop that in place. Okay. And you can see how it's filling in all that little gap there. And actually creates a little bit of suction too, which is really nice. You want to have a rag handy just to wipe off any of the excess before it starts dripping down all over everything. And this can be cleaned up easily a little bit later on after everything is said and done. So each one of our fasteners we're going to apply a little bit of Loctite to, and we're going to use our T15 Torx bit to just lightly secure them in place before we torque them down to the final setting here. So we're going to apply a little bit of red Loctite to each one of our fasteners. And on the Remington 700s you have 3 long screws and 1 short screw. short screw goes in the front always. 3 long screws can be interchanged between the other mounting holes. So, a little bit of Loctite on our fasteners. Ooh, a little bit much. We'll just swap him over here, drop him up front there. So you don't want to tighten these screws down terribly much. You still want to be able to move the base around just a little bit to get it nice and centered. Okay. Make sure that that recoil shoulder is pushed all the way forward. And you want to make sure that the recoil shoulder is in full contact with the receiver itself. And then what you can do is just torque down a couple of your screws just lightly. That'll hold everything in place while you finish out installing your fasteners. After we get this last screw in, we're going to move on to applying the proper torque to these fasteners and clean off any excess, and we're going to be done. Alright, so at this point I've cleaned up all of our excess Loctite and whatnot that's been seeping out from under the rail, and quickly we're going to adjust our torque handle 15 inch-pounds, and we're going to just give these fasteners a turn until they lock in place. Torque handle cams over, and you know you're at the specified setting. Very, very simple. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Alright guys, well I hope this was an informative and helpful video for you if you were looking to mount a quality scope base to your rifle. The last thing really to do is just to make sure that your bolt slides back into your receiver without any kind of issue. You know, sometimes if you buy maybe like a cheaper base, or sometimes quality control issues from the factory, you might have longer screws than necessary for your receiver, and you might get a little bit of drag on your bolt. In that case, the screws would just need to be removed, and you can actually turn those down very easily on like a belt sander or even just a little mill file on your vise. And something I forgot to mention in the intro to the video was I'm just using a couple of vise blocks here to hold the rifle for me. Now you can use anything to hold the rifle. You can use a little rest or some sort of gun vise, like you know, anything like that that you would normally clean your rifle with. But a vise is really handy for a number of things and is a must for anybody who's serious about doing their own work on their firearms. But anyway, stay tuned. We've got a lot more to come with this particular rifle and just this process itself. I'm going to show you guys, you know, how to mount a rifle scope properly. We're going to get Ray involved. Like I said, we're going to do a little bit of custom work on the bolt. We're going to add a different sort of extractor to get rid of the clip style extractor that's inside the Remington bolt here that's standardized. We're going to be installing some form of tactical bolt knob on this rig. And like I said, we're going to be doing some work with the chassis system and such, and just really seeing what we can do with this thing. May even shorten the barrel to 18 inches, you know, overall. Not really sure yet. It's just kind of an ongoing process, and you know, just taking you guys along for the ride. But anyway, stay tuned. A lot more stuff on the way. Take care.